Hey guys, I'm Simon, and this is going to be the very first episode of Real Talk, where we're going to hang out and talk really, I guess. So, today's episode is all about how to get into the custom keyboards enthusiast hobby. Now, obviously, before we begin, we need to kind of figure out what is an enthusiast. Now, people would think enthusiast means you got to spend a bunch of money, but that's not necessarily true. And if you're smart, you don't have to spend a bunch of money until you know exactly what you want. So I think an enthusiast is somebody that's enthusiastic about modding and getting the perfect feel and sound and design they're looking for from a keyboard. I don't think that enthusiasts will go out and buy each individual thing, but enthusiasts will take the time and effort and understand what they're looking for and what they may like and what they may not like. I like to see it like another hobby. Think of it as like car enthusiasts or like mountain bike enthusiasts. Think of it as if the products you're planning to buy are much larger than they actually are. Because a lot of us in the keyboard community get into a cycle where we say, it's small, if I don't like it, I'll just toss it in a closet. But pretend that a keyboard switch, instead of being this big, is like this big. Treat it like, car suspension or like mountain bike tires or something of the sort, where you're more likely to do a lot more research before you go out and invest into something that might be good for you and may not be good for you. Now, if you keep that type of philosophy when it comes to the purchasing of keyboards and switches and plates and PCBs and all that good stuff, then you may realize that in the end, 2-3 years down the line, you've got cash in your pocket that you wouldn't have had in the first place, which then would allow you to go all in on a super nice keyboard, for example. All right, now who am I? My name is Simon. I've been into mechs for about 8 years. 8 years ago, I purchased this Leopold right here, an FC700. Right now, it's got some very special keycaps on it. And I've been in the community, like deep in the community, for about 4 years now. So I've seen things come and go. I've noticed trends, and I've gotten a fundamental understanding of, how things work in general. Now, in addition to this, I make and sell keyboards, I build keyboards, I do live streams on Twitch, I review group buys, I've run a few group buys. I like to think that I am decently versed in the hobby and the community, maybe not as much as others, but decently. But I have my biases and I have my preferences. And in a hobby that is almost 100% preference, you have to keep that in mind. So, for example, I'm not a big fan of 60%. I like flexible plates, and I like linear switches when it comes to MX style switches. I'm a fan of PBT instead of ABS. My sound profile liking may differ than yours, or may differ from yours. But we've all got our biases, and you too have your biases, which brings us into, what do you do? How do you get into this hobby? What is the play? Well, the play is quite simple. You watch and you learn. You treat this as a far more expensive, far more large in terms of size, hobby. Take the time you need. Figure out from the top what type of switches you may like. Now, somebody might suggest, just go and buy these. But again, preference and bias. Do not listen to one source, and that one source includes me. If you are interested in a particular new switch, get multiple points of view with conflicting ideas. Don't listen to 5 reviews where everybody says, it's the best switch ever, then you may as well have just watched one review. I want you guys to get out there and gather enough information about anything that you may be interested in. long before you even consider the option of purchasing it. So in terms of finding the switches that you may like, start with what you know. If you know nothing and you're just beginning, well, you shouldn't be in the high-end, custom keyboard enthusiast market, but let's say you are. Let's find out what kind of switches you like. Don't go out and buy, 100 of this type and 100 of that type and, 200 of those because maybe I like them and maybe they won't be around tomorrow. No. See what you can do for free, first of all. Go to meetups. Find out who lives near you. Go to their house. Touch their keyboards. And maybe you live in the middle of nowhere, but I guarantee you, if you reach out to people in the community, you will find people you did not think existed. I thought I was alone here where I live for ages, and now I know like 5 or 6 people within driving distance where I can go touch their keyboards, they can come touch my keyboards. Now, if that's not an option, you've obviously got meetups. Obviously, with how the world is right now, meetups aren't really happening, but they'll be back. And if there's a large meetup happening remotely near you, it's worth driving out or flying out just to try out a bunch of stuff and get first-hand experience without having to invest the money required. Now let's say that's off the table as well. Buy the bare minimum amount of the switch. Buy 1 switch if you can. And if the minimum is 10, buy 10 switches. Start with the cheapest. Start with, Gaterons and Gretex and just normal cherries and see what your preferences are early on before you invest heavily. Because let's say hypothetically you walk into the hobby and you're like, oh, these holy pandas sound awesome. And you go and you blow $300, which I've done, on pandas, for example, and you hate them. Sure, you can resell them, but that's wasted time, that's wasted effort, that's just a bad idea in general. So try the minimum amount of switches you can possibly get and start cheap so you figure what you like. See if you're more into the linears. See what kind of weight of linears you like. Are you more into tactiles? Are you more into clickies? Figure that out. Maybe you like a lot of things. I like a lot of things, but I don't like every linear switch. I don't like every tactile switch, and I don't like every clicky switch. But I didn't figure that out by going out and buying 500 of each type. No, you start small. You start small. Don't look at graphs. A keyboard switch is all about what you feel when you press it and what you hear when you press it. And your eyes seeing a graph do you no good because each switch can be wildly different. I did a video on this called Switch Batch Variance. And it basically states that, my cherry blacks and your cherry blacks could feel and sound completely different. And that's just how it happens. All right, next up, we want to get into the type of feel that you like. Do you like more flexible plates? Do you like more stiff plates? Do you like brass plates? Do you prefer a deeper sound or a quieter sound or a louder sound? And for this one, there's some cheaper ways of doing it as well. Pick up your first keyboard. Get the plate files. If you ask nicely and you ask the right people, you can get the files for the plate. And the best way of figuring out what plate you like is to have one keyboard and simply go out yourself and make 4 or 5 plates in 4 or 5 different materials. Laser Boost, for example, does this. There's a lot of lasering companies all over the world, and there's probably one local where you are that will do keyboard plates for about $20 each, which isn't bad. Once you're this deep into the hobby, you should kind of already know what kind of plates you like. Like for me, I like a nice, polycarbonate half plate. I like brass plates sometimes. I like FR4. I like carbon fiber. I like aluminum. Sometimes I prefer no plate, but I learned this through my own testing. So go out, get some plates made. Or if you're ordering your first keyboard, pick up all the plate options. It might be kind of expensive, and if it is, don't do it unless you're absolutely sure. But it will help you a lot down the line. And then this leads us into the third step, is what kind of keyboard designs do you like? Now, preference and bias, remember that. Preference and bias is huge. So I like particular keyboards. It doesn't mean that you will like that particular keyboard. People will come to me and be like, hey, Simon, what do you think is the best 75%? Well, I know what the best 75% is for me, but for you, I don't know what your budget is. I don't know what your use case is. I don't know the sound profile that you like. I don't know the feel that you want to go for. I don't know the design aesthetics that you like or the color choices that you might prefer. All of that ties in together to make a keyboard good or bad. And the best thing you can do is keep an eye on running and previously run group buys, so you get an idea of the type of designs. I say this half-heartedly, but listen to sound tests. Sound tests can be incredibly misleading, but it'll at least point you in the correct direction of where you want to go. Keep an eye on the group buys. If you see something you really, really like, consider going in on the buy. But again, see what others say about it. And again, you want people with conflicting opinions. You want to hear the good and the bad to get a fundamental understanding of what you're in for. And in general, if you miss out on something that you really, really like, I do not suggest you go out and buy it secondhand for like a huge bloated rate. I recommend you wait, because more often than not, a similar keyboard with very similar design aesthetics will come down the line. And it will be far cheaper if you buy it at group buy than if you buy it much, much later. So get familiar with the running group buys. Get familiar with the interest checks. Maybe once a week, open up Geek Hack, just scroll through and see what's going on. Check out keyboard Instagrams when it comes to design and whatnot, so you get an idea of the designs you kind of like, and then you can make a mental note. The next time, for example, you see something, with an Alice layout or something of the sort, you can be like, oh, I'm interested in this. Let's see how it is in terms of pricing and see if that's for me. All right, so to recap, don't go all in on hype. Be smart with who you listen to. Don't get all your information from a singular source, and don't get all of your information from multiple sources that agree on everything. Do not buy into the hype. Hype tends to be very expensive, and more often than not, as a matter of fact, almost every time, I have been disappointed by every hype purchase that I made, whether it be switches or a new mounting type or something of the sort, stabilizers, etc. I've always kind of been disappointed. Be smart, and you realistically have nothing to lose by sitting and waiting and learning. If you sit and you wait and you learn, by the time the correct thing comes out, the perfect thing for you, the perfect keyboard or the perfect switch, you will know with 100% certainty, and you won't have to listen to anybody's advice, at which point, then and there, you can go all in, once you're comfortable enough in the hobby. So don't go out and spend a bunch of money right off the bat. Don't buy secondhand goods unless you know for a fact it will change your life, or the price is very good. Try what you can with the minimal investment. The minimal investment. And again, watch and learn. Treat this like a far more expensive hobby. Treat this like, being a car enthusiast. You're not going to go out and buy 5 types of spoilers for your car and try them all out. Nobody does that. People will do the research. They'll sit there and figure out what works for them. And keyboards are getting up there in terms of price. I mean, one of these right here goes for about $5,000 now in the aftermarket. Is it worth that much? I don't think so, but people are paying that much. So you have to treat it like that. You have to treat it like a far larger hobby. You have to be realistic. And again, be smart with all of your investments. Anyway, that's it for this episode of Real Talk, where we talk real about real things. And I'll catch you guys on the next episode of Real Talk. If what I talked about resonates with you, consider dropping a sub or popping over to our Twitch. And that's it. I'll see you guys in the next one.